Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Office podcast. I am your host, Asan. I forgot to do something in the last episode, which I was slapping myself for, and that was to introduce this amazing book that my thoughtful wife, got for me. It is The Office, One Quote a Day. So I'm gonna share a quote before I start today's episode. I'm going to just read through the little intro of this book first. Recipe of Joy. Flip through the pages of this book and read one Dunder Mifflin quote daily or whenever. You're looking for an answer. You need a master for guidance. You just met a thief of joy. You need a stress relief. You don't know how to entertain guests at a dinner party. A new plague just hit the earth. You just got, boom, roasted. You just finished watching The Office for the 69th time. Enjoy. So for the audio listeners, I'm holding up the book again. It is a book full of quotes from The Office. I'm not going to start at page 1 because I'm not a conventional kind of guy. I'm going to flick through it randomly and start on this page. And the first quote is, I love inside jokes. I'd love to be part of one someday. Michael Scott. Now, I'm just trying to think what episode that was. I believe that was the episode when Jim and Josh go to that conference in, I think it's Philadelphia, and Michael and Dwight are also there at the tech conference, and they talk about the Maduri Sours thing. And yeah, Michael said he'd love to be part of an inside joke. Don't test my knowledge of The Office, man. I've been watching it for like 13 years now, so I know pretty much all the lines. Hopefully, I'm getting cocky, but hopefully I know the other lines from the other quotes. But we'll see. We'll see on the next episode whether I get that one too. As I said, thank you for tuning in to another episode. I am still trying to find some kind of structure for these episodes. I just love talking about this show so much. I love watching it, and it's only right that I talk about it. So I'm trying to figure out what kind of topics would be of interest and of value to all of you amazing people out there that are listening, and what fans of The Office want to hear and know about, in my opinion. And please do take it with a grain of salt, because these are my opinions. Some people might love the episode Scott's Tots. I absolutely hated it and thought it was the most cringe-worthy episode in the whole series, but there was a genius behind that episode. I'm not going to get into Scott's Tots today. I think that's a video on its own. But there's episodes that I really don't like and some people love. So Scott Tots is one of them. But we're not here to talk about Scott's Tots today. We're here to talk about whether the UK version or the US version of The Office is better. Now, in my opinion, I believe that it's the US version. And the reason I believe that is because the US version obviously has more content. It went on for 9 series, whereas I think the UK one was 2. I want to say 2. Let me fact check before I get in trouble. I think it was 2 series. But it wasn't for me, man. It wasn't for me. Like, UK humor, like, for it to be funny to me, has to be very specific, right? And for me, it just wasn't. It wasn't it. It wasn't the one. I'm just checking now quickly how many. Two series, 14 episodes. So it wasn't for me. Ricky Gervais, yes, is a funny guy. All of the other characters and actors were funny. But again, I think also at the time, I was quite young when it came out, right? So when did it come out? The UK Office was out in... It came out on BBC Two on the 9th of July in 2001. I was 10 years old. So I wasn't even watching it when it first came out. And around that time, I don't know what humor was like in the UK. Obviously, it's, I think it's won awards. People loved it. But again, I was too young to watch it back then. And when I did eventually watch it, it really didn't resonate. Like, it was kind of a show of its time. Let's say that. So when I watched it, maybe, 10 years after? So I want to say like maybe 2011, I started watching the UK version. And I got into 2 episodes and just stopped. It really wasn't for me. That was the initial round of watching it. It wasn't for me. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was funny. There were a couple lines here and there. The awkwardness of Michael Brent was funny. David Brent, sorry, was funny. So it wasn't for me. Then I started on the US version. And again, the first 2 or 3 episodes were very similar, very dull, very stiff. But because there was more content of the US office, and I kind of cheated because Comedy Central used to have clips of the show. So when I was home for the holidays during university, I'd see clips of it. And I thought to myself, that looks like a good show, a funny show to watch. So then I started watching it in 2010. I gave the pilot series a chance. And as I say, the pilot series wasn't great. I'm going to dissect more episodes later, but like episode 1 I dissected on a previous episode. I didn't like episode 1, the pilot. They were saved by the fact that they had shifted their focus and shifted their storylines in season 2, 3, 4 and beyond. Had they stuck to the same sort of narrative, the same sort of feel of the UK version, I think that show would have flopped. And that kind of example is evident all over the place. You've had remakes of shows all over the place and they haven't worked. So one show that I absolutely love, the US version of is Impractical Jokers. I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows. But when the UK tried to replicate it, it just was very cringe. It wasn't enjoyable. It wasn't entertaining. It just really was a bad show. Very badly produced, in my opinion. But the US version is my favorite of all time. And another show I can think of is The In-Betweeners. So again, when I was younger in my teens, I enjoyed that show. Very funny, very edgy. And then when the US created their own version, I think I watched the pilot episode of that and it was a like for like and it just didn't work. So firstly, for those reasons, the US Office is my favorite show out of the 2, out of the UK and the US. Another reason I would give is because I felt like season 2, when I eventually had watched the UK version, they hadn't really shifted much from the original narrative, the original feel. Season 2 of the US one was completely different. It was day and night how different it was from season 1 of the US. The UK stayed with the same sort of format for the season 2, and I wasn't a fan of that. I really didn't like that. It was not something that was appealing to me. And another reason why is because it's such an easy watch. The US Office I can put on in the background and I know what episode it is. I know what's happening on the screen at the time, even when I'm, not really paying attention to it. It's a show you can sit back and unwind to if you've had a long day or if you have like a gap between something. So for me, when I have a gap from work to my next like evening ventures, in between that time where I'm having dinner or doing something, I can just put on an episode and it's such an easy watch. And there's no thought required to watch that show. And I know what my favorite episodes are. I know what my favorite seasons are. I know where I can find the episodes. So I know straight away, season 7, episode 1 is Nepotism, which is one of my favorite episodes. And the reason why I like that episode is because it is a classic Office episode. You've got complete mayhem with Michael Scott's nephew working for them. You know that straight away Michael, being Michael, is gonna do something crazy to try and teach his nephew a lesson, whose name has slipped my thoughts. What is his name? Luke. Yeah, so Luke being in that episode was very funny. Michael spanking him was hilarious. It was, that's comedy gold right there. And I think for me, the show is top tier. It's a show that I go back to all of the time. I watch an episode a day, as most of you will know from this podcast. I watch an episode a day. I don't think there has been a day in the last 13 years where I haven't watched an episode. And the only time I can really think that I didn't watch an episode was perhaps on my honeymoon. I didn't watch an episode through that period. And I think that's it. I think I've watched an episode every single day for the last 10 years, which is 13 years, which is absolutely crazy. And I still find it entertaining. I literally watched an episode just before I jumped on here. So the episode I was watching was the one where Andy has to sell his dad's boat. That was the episode I was watching. Again, top tier episode. Really enjoy it. And going back to the UK version of The Office, UK sitcoms, when they have been written well, always work. When they're trying to be something that they're not, they don't work. So the UK version of The Office, I believe at the time, was like a kind of a newer concept with the whole mockumentary thing. It didn't work for the UK, in my opinion. But for the US, man, it really did work. And again, they've won awards for this show. It's an amazing show. Another show that I can think of is obviously Parks and Recreation, which I haven't watched yet. But again, I've seen no, that's a lie. I've seen the pilot episode, and already I know that a show like that would work in that format. The UK, now if they tried to do a UK version of Parks and Rec, I don't think would work. Even with the writers we have in this day and age, you have to be careful with who you're going to cast. Firstly, I think the cast was spot on for The Office. UK, definitely, I like the cast. Don't get me wrong, I'm not completely hating on the show. It's just out of the two, right? The US version also had a top tier cast. But for me, the US wins. I think they make the better shows. All of the series that I've watched in the last 10 years, 15 years, even 20 years now, have been all top tier American shows, because they make very, very good shows. Now, don't get me wrong, the UK too make very, very good shows, but for me, it's always been the US that make the best shows. It's always the US that are kind of a bit more mindful of things in shows. Now, listen, I might be wrong. There might be amazing UK shows out there. If there are, please let me know what they are. And I have seen some. Again, I'm not hating on the UK, but for me, the US Office is the better show. Now, I would love to hear your opinions. Please leave them in the comment section below. I'd love to have some discussion about this. And also, please leave some of your comments in the comment section below so we can talk about them on these episodes. Please also email me in any questions that you might have. I've left an email in the description box below, so please send me an email through, and I'd love to talk about our favorite show. And that, my friends, is the episode for today. Thank you so much for listening and for watching if you're watching on YouTube. If you did enjoy it, please hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe and share and do all that amazing stuff so this podcast can be huge one day and I can talk to the cast of my favorite show. Thank you for listening. Catch you on the next one. Take care.